Inhale for 1, 2, 3.
I feel a lot calmer. Like my chest isn't used to expanding that far out.
It's hard at first.
Yeah. Why do we react to things we later regret? Someone said something wrong, a customer complained, something goes wrong in your business. They all can cause a reaction that we don't want. So I sat down with mindfulness coach Teresa Coltrin to understand why we react the way we do and how to create a gap between what happened and how we react. Let's get into this. Okay, thank you for coming on. Why don't you start telling us a little bit about you, how you got into mindfulness and life coaching?
Yes. So I'll start with how I became a coach. So I was going through a really challenging time in my life. I lost a father to pancreatic cancer. I went through a divorce. I went through some job loss. And I was really in a time where I was searching for anything to kind of help me understand everything that was happening in my life. And I remember I would wake up in the mornings feeling so heavy with just anxiety and feeling anxious and not knowing like what to do with myself. Until finally one morning I woke up and I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. I read that people meditate to kind of calm their mind. So I was desperate to kind of find anything. So I started to do a headspace meditation, a guided meditation in the morning. And so I would wake up and I would feel the anxious feelings and I would just plug in my headphones and lay on the floor and do the meditation. Then I would wake up and then I would start a walk around a lake with my dog and I would start focusing on gratitude and I would start to think about all the things that I had. Because in those moments of anxiousness, I was, you wake up and you feel the lack or you're feeling anxious because of the loss of my dad or the divorce and all the things. And so by me helping myself remember all the things that I did have, like a car, a roof over my head, another job, a dog, it started to pull me out of that anxious feeling. And so I started to just kind of have this mindful practice every day, walking around this lake. And on the other half of the lake, I would start to think about all the things that I wanted to bring in my life. And I would have gratitude for everything that was coming to me. So it became kind of this ritual. And as we fast forward in time, as I was kind of healing and going through that process, there was this New Year's, I remember specifically, we were in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and we were at dinner and we were all going around the table sharing our wishes for the new year. And I said that I wanted to find my purpose and my passion this coming year, to figure out, what it is I should be doing with my life. Because I was kind of also feeling that push to understand myself from that perspective too. And a month later, our company was acquired and I was let go again. And at that point in time, though, I felt that was kind of like a sign from the universe to kind of just really dive into what it is that I wanted to do. And at that point, I had already been listening to so many self-help books and podcasts and TED Talks, and I was just immersed in kind of the self-help world. And I was just naturally kind of like loving and supporting people around me. And so many people were like, oh, you should be a life coach. And I'd never heard that term before. And I was like, what is a life coach? And so then I started Googling it and I just was putting the pieces together. And I'm like, oh, this makes perfect sense. And so I found a program and I signed up for the program. And the first day I sat down, the first hour, I was like, this is for me. And so I started the coaching program. And then I started coaching people. I didn't even have a website, but I had a few people. Brian was one of my first clients, your last guest. And yeah, I just really, really loved it. And so I just loved being able to help people. I think I was so inspired to understand, like, as I was going through my own self-help journey and seeing the light, I just felt so compelled to want to help others through the same process and just kind of let people know, like, you may be going through a hard time, but there's a way out of this. And through that work, a lot of that is mindfulness. A lot of practices and things that I developed was understanding this practice of mindfulness.
Okay, so let's come to mindfulness. What is that? Because I feel it's like an elephant in the room. It's a term that is used a lot. You came through it because you were going through a really tough time. Lots of things were happening to you. Not many people go through what you went through. So what is mindfulness and how should we think about it?
Yeah, so mindfulness, to me, the way I like to explain it is having this practice and ability to be able to slow yourself down and have being present in the moment to where you can not just respond to life, but to consciously make decisions from a place of just being present with yourself. So kind of slowing down, getting quiet, and being able to choose how you want to respond to a situation by paying attention to how your thoughts and feelings are and what's happening in the current day or whatever you're doing. And so a lot of us are so focused on, like future, right? Our minds are either in the future, which we can't control that, or they're in the past, right? Which we can't control that either. So all we actually have control over is being in the present moment. And with that, you can develop a practice that allows you to acknowledge your thoughts, feelings, and decide how you want to respond to that. And so I think when you're going through a hard time, you can say, okay, I'm going through something hard, like losing my father to cancer was really hard. I was going through the grieving process. And so, just having the practice of every day being like, okay, you lost your dad. This is something really hard and you're doing your best to go through it. What's something that you need now in this moment to be able to move forward? And so it was like kind of having this practice, and even still now, being able to just slow down every day, be mindful to how you want to show up, how you're eating your food even. Like it goes down to even like when you sit down for your meal, are you shoving your food in your mouth? Are you standing and walking? Or are you able to sit down, take a breath, and slowly take a bite of your food, to taste the food, to smell the food, and let the food go down, to your stomach and feeling good and relaxed. Like being able to just be so present that you're being in the moment and being able to just like choose how you want to live, if that makes sense.
What does it look like? For someone who may not understand this, what does it look like for someone who is being mindful as opposed to someone who is just not? What's the difference in the state of mind?
Yeah, really good question. So I think like a good example would be is if, someone emails you or messages you and they're like frustrated with something, and not being mindful would be to get emotional about it and just respond right away from a place of anger. And judgment and whatever. But being mindful would be receiving that information, reading the information, taking a pause, walking away, taking some breaths, think about how you want to respond to the situation. So do you want to respond angry, upset, and anxious and all these things? Or is there a way for you to get calm and grounded and think about what the person is saying and decide to respond from a place of maybe compassion, maybe love, or maybe just truth, and just like being able to express yourself in a way that is, grounded for you. Because I feel like a lot of times we're all just like rushing, and the way that we respond to life is from a fearful, anxious, like frustrated, space. And so it's like you're either rushing around town, like doing things really quickly and just like sharp, and like not even making eye contact with your kids when you're putting the shoes on, or like, just rushing from one thing to the next and just not taking a pause or having a breath and just kind of like barely being present because your mind is just so like going. Or it's mindfully going, okay, we're going to go to the store now. Let me help you with your shoes, and making eye contact with your kids and taking 3 deep breaths before you start your car, and like get out of your car, like slowly, sit down, or slowly eat your food without being in a rush. Just it's being more mindful to be like in the present moment with what you're actually doing.
How is that different from being unemotional? Like some people might confuse, it sounds like I'm just like have to be flat with my emotions. How is being mindful different from being like just unemotional or like stoic in how you react?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think mindfulness actually, if you do it right and you start to practice and get really good at it, it doesn't mean that you can't have emotions. I think what it is actually helping yourself learn to hold space for your own emotions instead of just being reactive and putting your emotions on someone else. And so I think when something happens, like, the email or the phone call or whatever it is that has you upset, if you're mindful and you take a second before responding or reacting, you can actually just say, look, that person said this. I'm feeling super upset about it. I'm feeling really frustrated. I'm feeling really sad. And I'm upset about it right now. And that's okay. And kind of validating yourself in that moment of your thoughts and feelings, and maybe that takes a day, maybe it takes an hour. I have a good friend who is a coach, and he sets a timer for an hour, or whatever, to let himself be mad about something. And then afterwards, then he moves on from like whatever's happening. So I think it actually gives you the opportunity to acknowledge and validate how you're feeling, let those emotions come, and then decide from there what a good next step should be or what could be. So like an emotional reaction of not slowing down could be like, I'm going to say mean things back to that person and ignite the fuel. And then it's just like back and forth like fire. But instead you could say, I've thought about it. I'm sorry that you're frustrated. I'm also frustrated. Maybe there's an opportunity to talk about this. There's just a better way to respond to someone from a loving space, from an open space, and a more grounded version of yourself.
Yeah. And why do you think we react before we think?
Yeah, because I think we're on autopilot a lot of the times. Like when we are going so fast and so busy, we are in a reactive mode. We're not in control. I think when we're living in an autopilot, just like going from one thing to the next and not slowing down and not being present, I think we don't have control of our emotions. And so then, yeah, we're rushing all day. We're receiving, a negative look from somebody, or somebody honked at us, or our kid is screaming at us, or we get a bad, an email from a customer, and all that stuff is like happening, and it's like building up inside of us, and we're not creating space to be present with how we're feeling as we're taking in all that sensory information all day, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I think it just takes one last thing, and then we just snap and it unloads, So I think when you're having practice of being mindful throughout the day of slowing down, oh gosh, that guy honked at me, that I didn't like that, it made me startled. Okay, I'm safe. Couple deep breaths. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Learning to process life as it's happening instead of just pushing it all down as it's happening, and but learning to be present and process life as it's happening, and giving yourself those micro moments to slow down, take a few deep breaths, check in with your body, check in with how you're feeling. I also think too, I like to talk about breath work and how that grounds people, but I think when we are in that auto response, we're rushing and just responding to life, we're also holding and clenching our body. So we're holding our breath, clenching our body. And that actually sends a signal to our nervous system that we're in a state of fight or flight. We need to something's wrong, or there's an emergency. And I think that also makes us feel anxious and emotional.
Yeah.
So I think it all feeds itself.
Yeah. I definitely notice when I'm more tired or stressed out, it's definitely the small things trigger you a lot more, and you find you just react without thinking. It's almost, I think everyone has something that will trigger them to suddenly just be or something like that will trigger. What about people with really strong emotions? How is it different from them to maybe someone who doesn't have that strong emotions?
Yeah, I think that does make a difference, because I think sometimes if you're dealing with someone who's super emotional and they don't have the awareness, I think that is something it's a chance for you to grow. If you're the person who's not as emotional, I think there's an opportunity there for you to have the awareness and compassion of the person who is emotional, and understanding what your boundaries are with that emotional person, and then it's interesting because I think the last thing you want to do to an emotional person is tell them you're so emotional, because then they get even more upset, right? But what I have found that helps people who are emotional, I would say that I can tend to be emotional, but I think when people are emotional, they just want to be validated. They just want to be seen. They just want to be heard, because to them, whatever's going inside of them feels so big, and they probably feel anxious. So their response to life is being anxious and emotional. So once they become aware of that pattern, though, they'll learn to kind of I need to acknowledge and validate my own feelings, and I can't put my emotions on someone else.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that takes practice of someone being present and aware of their patterns in an emotional state. But as someone who's holding space for an emotional person, I think you decide what your boundaries are of how much you'll allow for you. And then also it's acknowledging and validating that person, I hear that this made you feel frustrated and, sad or whatever, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. What do you think is the best path forward? Or how can we support you with this, and then kind of giving that person a little bit of oh, okay, they heard me. They heard what I said,
I definitely feel I have big emotions, and it's anxiety, it builds up anxiety, and I have to let it out, and I want to share it. And when I share it, I feel better about it.
Yeah.
But often, sometimes you share it with someone, and they're that's just too much. And then you bring someone else down. But so I find it's finding ways of express, I want to get it off my system, letting it out, but necessarily not kind of dumping on someone else.
Yeah. So good practice with that, so again, with that bringing in the mindfulness piece to it is start to pay attention to when you're starting to feel the big emotions, what's triggering the big emotions when you're starting to feel the big emotions. A lot of times it can be because of going throughout the day, just kind of doing things but not feeling aligned with what you're doing. And so throughout the day, things start to build up inside that create those emotions of like frustration and whatever. So you can start paying attention to like what is actually triggering the emotions and when did they come up and with who and what are you doing specifically. And then from there, you can, learn to acknowledge and validate how you're feeling, because your feelings are valid. Everybody's feelings are valid. And then how we act upon them is, it's like you said, you don't want to be like the person that dumps on everybody all the time. So what is it do you think you need in those moments? So it's like asking yourself, like, okay, I'm feeling super mad and frustrated. Like I woke up late, like, this broke and something happened, and you're just kind of taking it in all day. And I'm just feeling so frustrated, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling emotional. What is it that I need in this moment to like slow myself down, to have a release? And, is that a walk outside? Is that like take a pillow and scream in the pillow? Is that like, taking a plastic bat and hitting a pillow? Like whatever the release is for you, and finding that safe space and safe practice for you to process those emotions. Because, when you have the emotions, they're there and you can't get rid of them. Like the body just needs to process them. So like paying attention, when is it happening? Who's it happening with? Why is it happening? And then what do you need in those moments to support you? And sometimes you may not know in the beginning. So sometimes you'll pay attention, like, yep, I'm getting emotional. And then it's like, okay, I need to excuse myself. For me, I think breath work, like excusing myself and going somewhere quiet and taking like 3 deep, like grounding breaths always really help reset me. Walking in nature, going outside for a walk helps me. I know in life we're so busy, so sometimes there's never really an opportunity to like do those things. But I think if you're in a moment where you're feeling super charged and emotional, I think even just communicating to the people around you, like saying, hey, I've had a pretty tough day. I'm kind of feeling raw. I'm having some emotions. I don't want to snap at you, but I'm just know I'm kind of feeling a lot of things right now, and I'm just kind of working through it. Like you can communicate to people too, like let them know where you're coming from.
Before we come to kind of like the tools to kind of help with mindfulness, what is the best way you think for someone to work out those stimuluses or those responses that they're triggering? Because it sounds like the first step is you have to really work out like what is triggering you in the first place. So
it's interesting because I think when people start this process, and even I go through phases of this too, is because we're also headspace right now with like our phones and electronics. Like we're just constantly in our head. We're a little disconnected from our body, and our emotions actually start in our body a little bit. You can start to feel like the stomach tightening or your chest tightening or your body clenching and you're holding your breath. So I think, having like getting in touch with your body is like something that is kind of like a piece that you do. And I think, having, practice in the morning where you maybe like fully breathe into your body, feel like you're sitting, like sometimes even when you sit down before you eat, just sit down and just go, whew, okay, how am I feeling? Like, relax the shoulders and clench your jaw. Like you'll start to kind of see like where we carry the emotions and the stress. So I think like paying attention to how your body is feeling, and, then from there, again, it's just like having this whole awareness of like watching what are your thoughts? Are you feeling like anxious, angry, sad? And then when you're feeling those ways and feeling that way and thinking that way, what are you saying? What are you doing when you have those thoughts and feelings? Like what kind of action do you take? So it's like really just like pretending like you're zooming out of your life and you're just watching the movie of your life, like watching yourself through the day. An interesting practice that you can do too. I learned this from Dr. Joseph Michael Levry, our spiritual teacher. He always says that before you go to sleep at night, if you can actually go through your day like backwards from like end to start, you actually can catch your like when you like watch yourself backwards. So like you're laying down and you're like, okay, I got in bed, I brushed my teeth. Like so you just go backwards throughout your day. I do this sometimes, and I can actually pinpoint the exact moment of when I got upset at something, or what negative thought I had that spiraled into an argument, or what I did that caused a problem. And it's really like fascinating because it's like it's giving you the opportunity to watch your life and understand like, okay, tomorrow I know I need to be different in this area, or tomorrow I need to pay attention to this. So that's like something you can do right before bed that allows you to kind of like, learn to like watch yourself more.
Do you think mindfulness requires reflection?
Yeah. I think a lot of reflection. And again, it's like we all need that quiet space. We need like solitude to reflect. And I don't know if we get enough of it because of the phones and everything that's happening. So I think anytime, at the end of the day or the start of the day, if you can have a moment of just quiet to like reflect, or throughout the day, just finding a little peace and quiet, to just reflect on how you're feeling. I think being able to have these like micro moments of checking in, I know we'll talk about practices soon. But what's really fascinating is once you start paying attention to like a pattern, and you notice that you're doing it and you start to like behave differently, you're actually creating new neuroplasticity in the brain. So the brain starts to like learn, oh, that's not the right way to be. Like this is the right way to be. So it's really actually so powerful. It's like very like if people overlook it, but like it's actually a really powerful thing you can do for yourself to just slow down, pay attention, notice, and then choose to act differently. It's like you're rewiring your whole like self.
I think that's the key. I think a lot of people don't realize it is about retraining your brain. Like your thoughts or your processes or your connections aren't going to change unless you actually do something about that. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, right?
Yeah, I don't think they do. Yeah, because I think it's like that awareness piece. I feel like a lot of times most people are kind of like asleep or unconscious, either by choice or they're just, they're not awake, and that's how, like, when you start to do these practices, you start to wake up to so many things. And then you start to really understand why your life is the way it is. Because you actually have, like, we have so much control of, like, we don't think that we do, but we have so much control over our lives. And it starts with how we're thinking, how we're feeling, how we're speaking, and how we're acting in every day. Yep. And unless you have that practice of being mindful and checking in with yourself in those micro moments throughout the day, then we don't actually have the control that we're looking for in our lives. We just let our emotions and things like run our lives. And also too, like, I like to bring in this too. It's like, what are you watching on Netflix, or like, what are you scrolling on your phone? Like, what are you reading? Like, who are you hanging out with? Like, all that feeds into your sensory and your nervous system too. So like surrounding yourself with people that love and respect you, that you feel good around, and watching things that make you feel uplifted and inspire you. All of that, especially before bed. Like, that's also like another little like secret before bed is like whatever you're watching or doing before bed, like your subconscious like takes that in and creates like that in your reality. So you want to like fall asleep looking at something like positive and motivational. I like to fall asleep looking at Pinterest boards that I create that are like inspirational, because that also helps too.
Do you think you have to change your personality to create mindfulness?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's like it's not a personality thing. I think it's more of an awareness. I think maybe your personality may change after you become more mindful, because you might become more aware of when you're like maybe being unkind to someone or rude to someone, or again, like how you're thinking, speaking, and acting. So it may change your personality by default because of you being more aware.
That's interesting. Okay. So we talked about mindfulness. Now, what about the best tools of like developing mindfulness? You talked about breathing. Like, what other tools people can use?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things out there. I think you have to just like subscribe to what works for you and where you are in your life. I always like to meet people where they are and share like what works for me. I know breathwork has always been something that has really helped me like get grounded to the present moment. And it makes a lot of sense when you stop and breathe, when you bring oxygen back into your body, it brings your frontal cortex back online. You're able to think. Like, that's why people, when you get upset, people say breathe, because when you stop breathing, like, you lose the ability to make decisions. But once you slow down and breathe, it calms those emotions, it calms the nervous system down. And it just allows you to kind of be back to that present moment to choose how you want to respond to things. So I really like doing like a breath check-in throughout the day. So I like call them like little micro check-ins. So for example, as I get in my car before I leave my house, I take 3 deep grounding breaths. As I'm putting on my seatbelt, I take grounding breaths to be present before I start driving. When I get to the place, if I'm feeling a little like rushed or anxious, I slow down again and I take the 3 deep breaths. And I just kind of practice this. I even practice it with my children too, when they're feeling upset and emotional and overwhelmed. So for me, breath work has always really, really been a very like powerful tool. And There's a special one that I like to do that's called 3-point breath, where you inhale for 5 seconds, you hold your breath for 5 seconds, and then you exhale. So that's one that's really, really powerful. And then along with that is, you're doing these check-ins, you're breathing, and in the micro check-ins is like actually like checking in with how your body is feeling. So we're kind of talking about like, is your jaw clenched? Are you like hunched over? Like, are you holding your breath? Like allowing yourself to like, when you sit down, maybe to have a meal, like sit down and be like, okay, like relax, like, oh, like, like unclench my jaw, like take a deep breath before you start like eating your food so fast, and like maybe try to avoid like holding the phone. So it's, just getting into this like beautiful habit of being present. And what I noticed as a parent too, I think for parents, this becomes really cool. Is like if you actually can put your phone away and then you sit down to have a meal with your kids and you actually look them in the eye and you're like talking to them and slowing down, or just like, because they're growing so fast. And what I realize is if we're so occupied with our emotions and rushing and going in the phone, we're missing like all these like really like beautiful moments with the kids as they're growing. And like, even for them, it helps them feel seen and heard and validated, and probably prevents like tantrums later because, you're present with them, so there's so many gifts, I think, that come from the practice. Even like when I go outside and I look at the colors of the trees and the flowers, like, it's like, wow, this is actually really beautiful. Like it just helps you like feel alive,
One of the things I do is I turn off all notifications on my phone except for like text messages or calls. So I don't want to be pinged by it constantly. Like, and you go into an app, you're like, turn on notifications. I just turn everything off because I don't want that distraction of suddenly being taken away from the moment when you're like with your kids or you're doing something, because your brain suddenly becomes distracted. Can we do a breathing exercise?
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask you if you wanted to.
Let's do it.
Let's do it together. I know, it's so nice. So just kind of sit in your chair. You can sit comfortable. And even now, just notice, do you have any tension in your shoulders? Are your shoulders?
Yes, I have tension everywhere.
Yeah, so just kind of let your shoulders relax. And how, like your jaw, how's your jaw? You're clenching your teeth at all? Just like let your jaw relax, let your hands relax. There you go. Okay. So I'll lead us through it. So go ahead and inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold your breath. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll do it 2 more times. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 2, 3, 4, 5. And then exhale out of your mouth this time. 3, 4, 5. Yeah. We'll do it one more time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 2, 3, 4, 5. And then exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. So just pause right there. Don't open your eyes yet. And then just allow yourself to sit and just tune into your body and just like see if it's telling anything to you.
I feel a lot calmer. I mean, we've done this before, and I said to you, I'm not used, like my chest isn't used to expanding that far out.
It's hard at first.
Yeah, I can feel like, I'm like, oh, I don't breathe in.
Yeah.
That
I noticed when you're breathing, I know your chest is like just a little bit, but it's like you want to get into the point where you're like, and then like, holding it. And then when you release that in the mouth, it like that helps the emotions. Yeah. There's actually like another breathing practice. I don't know how far we're going to get into breathing, but there's another breathing practice I can show you maybe another time. But like that's like for emotions.
Oh, really? No, show me. I'd love to see.
You want to see? Okay.
Because right now I can feel it. I feel like almost like a light, not lightness, like I'm going to pass out, but a good lightness in my head.
Yeah. That's like the endorphins relaxed. And the energy back into your body. I feel it, It's the oxytocin. Like it's making you feel relaxed, right? And so then if you can imagine you're in a stressful situation, you do that, then your brain is back online, then you can choose how you want to respond. And it's like, wow, it's like such magic, right?
Yeah. Okay. So what? So for emotions.
For emotions. So if you can put your hands on your chest, And so this one you can do, I mean, this one's like another, like, it's like out of breath thing, but you could do it for even just like 1 minute. But all you do is just exhale out of your mouth. So you just go like this. And you can start to pump your belly a little bit.
So I'm not used to doing that.
You just like let it out and then just sit. So it's like it takes another, like I'm already feeling it too. So you don't have to do it long, but that actually, it helps process emotions too. So like if you're having like, you know, like you don't want to do it till you pass out, but like just, you can do those three things, like those two things if you want to.
10 seconds? Or?
Yeah, 10 seconds to just like warm up to it. Sometimes it feels like, it's not like you want to be like hyperventilating at all. You're just exhaling out of the mouth. You're just going. And when you pump your belly too, it actually brings energy like through the body too.
Yeah, it's almost like you're like hitting a reset.
Yeah.
On your like oh, this is going on your mind and just think I'm just going to reset.
Yeah, exactly. It's powerful. It's so magical. That's why I'm like, it's the breath is like when I first moved out here, I was, you know, going to Nam Yoga in Santa Monica, and like I was just like fascinated with like I would go to these classes and I would just like do all these different breath works, and I would come out a completely different person. I felt younger, I felt lighter, I felt like there's more energy in my body. So I was like, wow, there is something like really to this. And when you do like all the research behind breathing, it really does. So like the breath works help you come back to the present, you know, help you ground you here, because that's all that exists is here, you know, and then you can make those decisions.
It feels like so like the tool is so simple, like breathing exercise, even for short periods. Like it seems so simple, but so why aren't more people doing it?
I think people hate it. Like a lot of times when I tell people to breathe, they're like, oh my God, I'm not going to breathe. I don't have time to breathe. And I think it's actually because, I don't know, when people breathe, maybe you felt this too, there's a little bit of this, like you have to surrender to letting go. And sometimes, even though we're anxious and whatever, we're still like attached to it. So it's like, I don't want to breathe because I don't know what's going to happen when I breathe. But it's like, oh, when I breathe, like everything works for me. But there's a little bit of this process of the person having to like surrender to slowing down. Some people don't like to slow down. They feel like if they slow down, they're going to fall behind, or life doesn't move slow, or, you know, like we have all these weird attachments to like overachieving and doing and going and like all this stuff. And so when you have to breathe, you have to slow down. And sometimes people don't like that, but it's the number one thing that we all need the most, you know?
Do you think people might see it as a weakness almost in a way, or?
Yeah, I think it depends on who it is. Like there, you know, I think sometimes when people are upset, they're like, I'm not going to breathe. I'm so mad, you know, because they can't think, right? They don't know that like the science behind it, that your body actually needs you to breathe when you're upset so that it can feel safe, right? But people don't really know the science behind it. I think, you know, they've been holding their breath so their brains aren't thinking. And yeah, a weakness piece of it, I think, yeah, if you're someone who doesn't believe in like, you know, yoga and meditation and mindfulness, you may think it's weird. You may think it's like a woo thing or it just doesn't work. But there's science that backs that it does, you know. But I think for me, like a lot of people who I see, like, and even for myself, for so long, slowing down in my mind, even to this day, like, oh, I can't take a rest or I can't break because then I won't get this done and I won't achieve. And, you know, that kind of leads into the bigger conversation of like doing the overachieving with like people pleasing and fawning and doing all this stuff. It's like we become so attached to like finding our worth to like achieving and doing. And I think that alone creates a lot of anxiety and pressure for people. And I think people get stuck in that loop, and to slow down and step out of that, people feel scared about that, you know?
So what would you say to someone feeling like that? Would you say, like, especially for someone in business, for example, like you will become more productive, you'll be able to deal with things better? Like, is it convincing them about the changes that they would make? Like, how would you convince someone?
Yeah. So, you know, what's interesting is that always, like, when I work with clients and, you know, a lot of them are entrepreneurs or business owners like us. And, you know, it always surprises me and people that actually, like, being successful in business actually has a lot to do with self-development of how you are and how you show up. And so basically your life is a reflection of you. So it's like, if you are ungrounded, stressed, and all over the place, then you can expect your life around you and your business to be the same way.
Yeah.
But if you are someone like, you know, if you have a daily practice of like, you know, waking up, grounding yourself, breathing, journaling, like gratitude, just something that allows you to kind of feel aligned so that when you step into your life, whether it's your business or your family, you are grounded, then everything will follow that energy of you. Yeah. So to me, I think as a business owner, yeah, like you have to feel like level-headed. You can't be so emotional. You can't make decisions from stress. And like, even as myself, when I started my coaching practice, I was like doing all these like different things. And I was like so attached and so frustrated and so like pushing. And it was awful. I felt bad. I didn't, it wasn't fun. My body was hurting and I didn't have fun with it. It was very stressful. And then everything else was hard, and so I think, when you slow down and actually get to reset yourself and have the breath and be mindful, you can choose a rhythm and a way that you want to exist in your life. So in your business or with your family. And I think it starts with you. It starts with how you're grounded and centered in your life.
It's almost like realizing this, depending how you run your life or your business, this could affect like your bottom line or your everyday life, because it gives you a chance to step away from the emotions and see the bigger picture and make better decisions. Yeah,
because you're not going to be so reactive and make an emotional decision that you have to pay for later, especially like with business and clients and things like that. Like sometimes we can just react and like, oh, I gotta solve the problem and just do it. But then like later on, you're like, oh, that wasn't the best decision. Like I should have slowed down. I should have taken a break. Like I should have, so it just, I think it gives you, again, that control that we're all looking for. And it's with the slowing down and being present and mindful.
What's the one thing you want someone to take away from understanding mindfulness?
Yeah, I would say that it's a practice. It's like, it's a practice that you do every day throughout the day. So it's these small micro movements of learning to check in with yourself and how you're feeling and giving yourself permission and awareness to make decisions from a grounded space. And I would say if you have, a lot of times you may have one good day where you're paying attention and being super mindful. Maybe the next day you're super reactive and emotional. And I would say on those days, just have like self-compassion for yourself. And what's beautiful is once you start to have compassion for yourself, then it becomes easier. And then you also start to have compassion for other people too.
And what's the one thing someone can do from today to develop a better mindfulness?
I think just paying attention. Like, so before you're speaking, like try to slow down, pay attention, or before you jump in your car and do the next task or whatever, like, can you challenge yourself to just pause and maybe take one breath and just see how you're feeling? And just, I think just, you have to start somewhere, but it's like, see if you can catch your thoughts, see if you can pay attention to what you're saying and doing, see if you can track where they're coming from and why it's happening, and just kind of like play like this game where it's a non-judge, like you're not judging yourself, and it's not like to be harsh on yourself, but it's more about just being curious of why you're saying, doing, and acting this way, and why it's happening, and is there a better way to respond?
Cool. And then last thing, just tell people on the camera how to find you on the socials and online.
You can find me on my website, which is teresacoltrin.com, and then on social media, it's Teresa_Coltrin. And that's how you can find me.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. We did it. Woo!
One thing I really took away from this conversation is that mindfulness isn't just about airy-fairy meditation. It's about understanding and controlling your emotions and reactions. It's about creating a gap between what happens and how we respond. I'd love to know in the comments what resonated with you the most. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to like, subscribe, and for real business, real lessons, and stay tuned for part 2 of our conversation with Teresa. Big love.